Hello and welcome to another episode of the WEBSTER Report on this Sunday, the 22nd of February 2026 on our Gregorian calendar. Quite a bit happening, but what are we missing by these big distractions, I wonder? Couple of things, interesting things happened this week. Obviously Randy Andy, that's one of the things that we've got to, I think we've got to start off with, really, Alex. And what's your opinion on that after all this? I mean, some interesting, there's a photograph of him being smuggled in a car, and the look on his face, it's launched 1,000 memes that has today. So what do you think, Alex? And how are you, by the way?
Yeah, I'm good, Paul. I hope you're good. Yeah,
I'm okay.
Good. Yeah, I mean, with Andrew, I mean, obviously I saw it, but as I've said a few times in recent months, I'm not really engaged in sort of the scene that makes the headlines in the news. And, you know, regards to the rights and wrongs and how-tos and wherefore that, it's just where my life is going at the moment. And, you know, I feel pretty good about that. But I did see a few of the photos, and obviously, you know, there's a lot of opinion about it. And largely, I think it is a distraction. I think for whatever reason, it's been placed in front of us in order to distract from something else. Now, normally in the past, maybe up until about 18 months ago, I might have pondered a little bit about what that is, and you know, take your pick as to what you think it might be a distraction from. But it's definitely, it's good entertainment, isn't it? And allows people to express a sense of moral outrage, to project a sense of how evil that Andrew is, which is usually a form of bloodletting to avert our fury about other things that are actually quite significant. He seems to have become the token royal who everyone can take, you know, all the garbage out on, so that it's almost like we can say, well, you know, if we can say bad royal to Andrew, then Charles is kind of okay, because Charles and William have to take a position about him. And it's the same, you know, with every other thing that you could say. He's just a great example of somebody who you can throw under the bus to cover all your bases, if you see what I mean. And then everything else becomes okay. You know, yeah, everything else is fine now. We've caught the real culprit, and because he's a royal and he's really high profile, all the better, all the better. And I suppose as well, it supports the Q narrative. You know, it could be considered to be, yeah, here we go. This is the beginning of the arrest. This is where it's all starting now. And of course, I'm not saying it isn't that, but there's absolutely no way that you can certainly say that it is that. So it serves many purposes, I think, and the main one is distraction.
Yeah, I would say so. When you mention Q, it's funny because obviously Rupert Law's come out with his new political party that he's starting up. You know, everything around Rupert Law, everybody is pointing at Q. So he seems to be our Q poster boy. Even Tommy Robinson's endorsing him. You know, Nigel Farage and Reform. And you have to be honest, whatever Nigel was saying, he's certainly flipped and he's gone back on what he was saying, and then he's gone and taken on people from other parties that were already doing the things that we didn't want. So, you know, we're looking like we've got a shoe in. When you said about Andrew being singled out, it's like, do people not remember Jimmy Savile and how close he was to these royals? We're just looking at Andrew now and we're saying, oh, what a dirty guy. You know, we're just pointing at this one. Yeah, you know, I know people who love the royal family and they feel sorry for his daughters. Yet Sarah Ferguson's emails, one of the emails, she's talking about the two princesses. They're off on a shagging weekend. That doesn't sound like they're totally innocent. It sounds like they're doing what the royals have always done. We've seemed to have a lot of these distractions. You know, we had distractions with the royal families, with the royal family coming up to World War II as well. You know, we got footage and photographs of the Queen Mother and her daughters doing Nazi salutes, but we've got to forget about all that. You know, we had a king that abdicated, remember, so we had a stuttering king who came in. Now, they've made that into a film, and it's such a touching film, and it portrays them in such a way. And then the film takes over, you know, how it bypasses all those senses, all those defenses, and it goes straight through, and you just end up feeling what the filmmaker wanted you to feel about these people. And you can see how the propaganda is just being so heavily utilised and how well it works.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we could ask some questions as to why it works so well. And I don't think we can single out any particular demographic in terms of saying, oh, they're particularly gullible. You know, supposedly, people in the truth movement are supposed to have eyes in the back of their head as well as the side of their head and the front of their head. So you might think that people in the truth movement will be less susceptible, but they're less susceptible to certain aspects of the cultural rot. But in other areas, they seem to be just as blind as anybody else. And I think one of the reasons for that affects everyone is there's a difference between a culture that's based on performance, like things like roles. We've all got roles that we play when you go to work and stuff. Sociological, cultural, we play roles, and we were a persona. So those young videos you were putting on a few weeks back as the openers, we have this persona. And even in astrological circles, the persona is the ascendant. It's not the core personality of the sun, who a person really is represented by the sun. There's their ascendant, which is how they meet the world, which is like a persona. And a persona is a role. It's a set of roles that we use to engage the world. And they're all performances. And it has to be said that people walk around, you know, they're trying to impress their manager, they're trying to get promoted, they're trying to do this, that, and the other. And in order to do so, they perform socially prescribed roles that bring about approval and acceptance. And to stand authentically in what you might consider to be truth is quite challenging, because people will sort of say, boo, hiss. And again, we should clarify what we mean by truth, because a lot of people, there's a difference between what we might call the truth as something objective outside of yourself and actually speaking truth. Speaking truth, it's communicative. Whereas, you know, truth as something that you might see out there is usually not truth at all. It's usually facts, or what are considered to be facts. You know, this is true about the world. The sun is shining right now, even though it's dark here in the UK. So that would be considered to be somehow a truth, but it's more accurately described as a fact. So what most people talk about when they actually use the word truth, they talk about facts, which might be considered to be states of affairs that are seen, that correlate to an actual, you know, event or happening. That they're just factual correspondences. It doesn't mean they're false, but they don't really have the quality of truth. Truth has sort of a more of a moral, ethical aspect to it, and also it carries presence. Truth carries presence. Facts are just dead, inert things. You know, yes, that's a table. Yes, it's got 4 legs. It doesn't really carry much weight. It's just a description of the isness of the properties of a thing. That's might be true, but it's not a very impressive truth. So you've got lots of people in this culture who are operating, walking around in roles, talking about facts as if that's what truths are, talking about things in a very external way, which can be copied and mimicked. So it's very performative. So a lot of people are walking around acting. And the reason why they're comfortable doing that is because virtually everybody else is walking around acting as well. So when Shakespeare talks about, you know, the world's a stage, he meant it in one particular way. And we think of it in terms of performance that's spectacular. Oh, I watched this movie. Oh, look at that. That's theatre. And everyone thinks that that's a performance, like it's a little bit unreal, like it's been staged for our entertainment. But most of us are actors walking around pretending to be real. That's why so many people like soap operas. They would rather watch a performance, or even reality TV. They would rather watch that than actually inhabit their own life. And inhabiting your own life is about being present and authentic, and that's the truth. And when you're living in that truth, it's personal truth, presence, you can speak from that platform, but you're going to ruffle some feathers. That's quite prophetic, actually. So I would say, really, we've lost the voice of prophecy in the culture, mate.
And I think when you touched on the soaps, I think that's been able to help no end, because, you know, we've gone from, you know, Deirdre in Coronation Street being put into prison and people voting for her to be to not be in jail. This is a soap opera. People took it for real. I remember one actor, I think it was Alan Bradley, you know, the one who got run over by a tram in Blackpool. I think somebody attacked him with a brolly because he was a naughty man. You know, this is how people are now perceiving life. And you know, right. As we said, we never, TVs, I think I was like one of the first of the TV generations. You know, I had a telly in my bedroom when, you know, most people just had one TV in their house. You know, it was only as I got older, going into the 80s, that people started to get TVs, videos, and stuff like that on a regular thing. But the television patented as a weapon because of those, how it puts you into that beta state where it's programmable. Your brain is now programmable, and you don't even notice it. You know, I've said before that my mum used to have full conversations with me, and then said, "Don't forget what I've said." And I said, "What are you talking about?" She says, "Paul, I've just been talking to you for 20 minutes. Danger Mouse was saving Penfold while she was talking to me, Alex. I ain't got a clue what she was talking about." But everything just bypasses through this television. So you think with films and then music, you know, it's not like a film is just, you know, put into a camera and say your lines and then cut and then we'll edit it. They look at lighting, they look at angles, they look at music, because it's all about emotion. You know, I've found a new lease with music recently. I've started to write again because I'm able to express myself for the first time properly, and I've got the abilities to the abilities to be able to put that to music without having to get my guitar out and then start layering tracks. Because back in the day when we were recording, we had a tape deck and we'd record and then we'd put the record and play and then we'd record again. So we'd layer the guitars over the top of it so it would get really heavy and put all other kinds of stuff in. But it would take forever. Now I'm able to write my own stuff and then music can be created around it. When you listen to that music and you hear those lyrics sang, it's like something of you has gone out and it's come back and you get a different understanding of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's when you look at a film and a movie like that has got all that in the package. You know what I mean? If you look at something like Jaws, you know, it was ages before you actually saw a shark. You didn't need to see a shark. It was the anticipation. It was, well, that's the camera. That's what's in front of you. What's behind you? What's behind you? When he's in the cage and he's looking, where's this shark going to come from? And it comes from behind. All of that is what it's designed to do. But we see it all as entertainment. And what do we see on mainstream news? Wars and rumours of wars. We haven't got a clue really what's going on in the world. You know, we can only go off our own fractured reality. And then when we interact with other realities, we get information, and it's how we deem that information. And I believe that the information that you take in creates that vibration, that frequency within you. Once you get into that frequency, whatever it is, then that is what starts to manifest into your life. You know, it's not what you see, it's what you don't see. It's what you hope for. And if you're hoping to survive and you're putting food together and you're looking to leave the country or make a bunker or something like that, then you're putting yourself into a certain vibration frequency. Not saying that that's a bad thing, because I'm trying to work out how we interact with this reality now myself. You know, 15 years of learning what the nuts and bolts of this world was, the fraud, the criminal aspect of it, and to see more and more people cottoning on to what has really gone on. But again, we don't know how to get going. And you know, as we saw with the truth movement, it got co-opted. Everybody got split up. We got divided up, and we went off, and not really much happened. But there's a concentrated effort now. We're seeing things happen with council tax and things like that. And you know, long may it continue, because something's got to get, Alex. We can't just sleepwalk into what is coming. But I don't know what the ramifications are, because if we can be articulate and we can go to a court, hold the court in numbers to be a true court of honesty, then we could change things. Rupert Lowe is saying those type of things, that he wants a government that works for the people, by the people, etc. That's brilliant. But what else are you going to do? Are you going to still charge council tax? Are you putting council tax up on people's property that it doesn't apply to? Are you going to make people pay for gas, water, and electric when they're paying for it already in taxes? What are you going to do about that? But when you go in on immigration and this other stuff, people are going to vote for you, and then they'll accept that the gas, water, and electric, they must be paid for. It's like they'll give you a bit, but take more afterwards.
Yeah. I think the thing is as well as this truth question regarding this, as long as all the baddies are out there, then we'll keep, we'll keep trying to seek out battles thinking that we're the goodies automatically because they're the baddies. So what's the significance of that? That we are so-called the goodies and they're the baddies. Well, we'll go on the offensive, and I think one of the things we've got to be aware of here, my approach now that I've been, I suppose, thinking about is that we need to live confidently in the world. We need to live our lives in some ways as if this wasn't happening. It's difficult when you get caught up in the spectacle not to respond or react to the spectacle or get creeped out by it or think, oh, this is terrible and they're doing this now and what are they going to do next? And I think realistically, especially from a Christian point of view, if you're talking about leading a whole life, leading a balanced life, leading a true life and speaking truth, then, it's important not to get drawn into that. So to live your life as if this wasn't happening, to live a fulfilled life under God, from our perspective, Paul, from a Christian perspective, imagining that this evil isn't really being done, even though it is, and live as if it wasn't real. Because as soon as you give it credence, it grows. Everything thrives off attention. If you give something attention, focus, it grows. If you don't, if you ignore it, and I don't mean ignore it in the sense of being ignorant, you're aware of it, but you don't take it seriously. You live your life according to a different script, and I think that that's what needs to happen more. Now, if you're doing that and the system comes for you, I think you should use the tools that you've gained through your awareness of truth to rebut the attacks and to basically maintain your position. It's like holding the line. Whereas the way we've got it now, because people feel under the cosh and they feel like there's a real big tidal wave about to kill them, they get into panic mode and they start thinking about taking the system down. But in general terms, even when things are not as bad as this, if anyone ever tries to take a system down, like think about mafia. Mafia is just like the illegal form of government because governments legalize mafia. When mafia press gangs press on people, there's this, I don't know, it's almost like a resignation that we've just got to pay up, because there are consequences like, you could be killed. Now the government can't afford to take such, overt measures. So it's not going to kill you. It'll punish you in different ways. But we're not dealing with mafia here. We are dealing with government, which is more covert. It's more like a serpent than a beast, usually government. Government has to act because it pretends to be moral and righteous and acting on behalf of the people. It has to pretend that it's doing that while it's actually robbing from the people, which means it has to operate in a serpentine, cunning fashion, not in a beast fashion. We know the beast at the end, in the end times. It's like the gloves are off, its full face is shown, it ditches the serpentine approach that it's usually used, and it comes on full force. Well, we know in the tribulation, the great tribulation, that we get to that level. But up until that point, it's serpentine. And that means what we ideally should do is know the truth, but live according to a deeper truth. And from our perspective as Christians, Paul, it's the kingdom is now. And as believers, and as part, therefore, of the church, the body of Christ, we should be living as though we're living under God. not under satanic rule, not under fear, not under oppression. So
right.
we need to lay our stall out, I think, to live with confidence while not
It's
being
not
naive
easy.
about things.
It's
Say
not
again, pal.
easy. It's not easy, that.
No, of course it's not.
When I got the understanding of this world, because it's very strange. I can look at all the world stuff and everything that's going on, and I can be in peace with it, because there's nothing you can do. Whatever's going on in the Ukraine, Syria, Iran, there's nothing that I can do about that. So I can only control my own fractal reality. If I'm entering into that frequency and vibration of worry over those things, then that is something completely that I'm going to worry about that. Well, that is like pulling on a thread, and you're just going to keep unraveling and keep unraveling and keep unraveling. Whereas, I unraveled enough. I'm just sat in this unraveled mess with well, what is there? If all this is wrong, if all this is lies, if my mum worked 13 hours a day, my dad did 6 nights, permanent nights a week with 1 night off, and they were taught to pay bills, then there's something wrong with this reality. And I couldn't find the answer. Now I know what the truth is, because when you see these people and you see the bloodlines that are related and that have the authority, they believe, and the control of this world, it is all through that consent, but it's consent by deceit. And it's hard to break through that barrier, because people who you love, who you trust, have given you those barriers. Which is, for me, it's almost like a groomer. Shh, it's our secret, don't tell anybody. They can't speak it out loud. They will become imprisoned by Stockholm syndrome. They'll fight to save this system, and yet it should be so easy for us to take over, because those people in Parliament, they work for us, Alex. I have people who will argue with me saying, "Oh, the gas, water, and electric were all privatised. It was all sold off." No, it wasn't. If I have a business and I employ you, Alex, to manage it, you don't suddenly own that business. You've got a tender to run that business for me. Now, if you're not running it correctly, then I've got to step in, because I've given you that contract. But these people are robbing us blind, because they're all treating us as a commercial agreement, because that's what we've been taught to act as. And people miss that, because they believe that these bills must be paid. And they can't, you just can't shake that out of them. And it's only, I think, COVID that has really, it forced people into having a look at things, because they had nothing else to do. And then when everything went up, they just come across different things, and then they realise there's something not right. For me, like I say all the time, Alex, when I got that check, I knew what they were doing. I knew how they were treating me. I knew what to do with that check. Got it in court that it was, that's a remedy, but we're not going to deal with it in this jurisdiction. Can I put it before a judge? So we have it all there. If I'd have sued them, if I'd been able to sue British Gas for British Gas, Scottish Power, E.ON, whoever, they're all making like £3.4 billion profit British Gas made in 2012. So, and they made £3.4 billion profit over, during COVID. And you think, on top of that, you've got all the bonuses. What are they getting paid bonuses for? They're collecting revenue off debtors, but they're treating creditors as debtors because it's government policy, and the courts are running that. Where do we take that? They know that the only thing left is civil unrest, and if we do that, then I think that's playing into their hands. I don't know. I certainly don't know what path we would take to change it. But as you said, if I get if I get bogged down in that, then that's where my planning and that's where my vibration and that's where my life will start to bring fruit. Well, what if I don't want to bring that fruit down that? I don't know what to do here. It's like I'm a blank canvas again, Alex. I've no idea what to do and where to go, and I'm waiting for signs. I'm waiting to see what happens. I think the fact that people have had enough, and courts and police, and even police and themselves are going to have to start challenging this soon. They've wrecked all the services. The prison service. There's a prison officer, going to jail nearly every week. Police officers go into jail every week. Prison officers every day. There's always articles. That's a massive change. When I joined the prison service, it wasn't like that. So something's changed. What is it? Well, it's over-promoted idiots in the SMTs who are taking government policies, putting it in their own little package, laminating it and colour coordinating it, and they're all patting themselves on the back and having toast and cake for breakfast and dinner in meetings where they talk about nothing. They don't know how to do the job, and the people who they've employed, many of them are incapable of doing that job. It takes a certain character to do a prison officer's job, and I knew so many of those characters who were great at that job. Those people who are still in that job, who I speak to, aren't working with people like that. Not all of them. There are still some good staff that come through. People who can talk to people, you can do that job, but you've got to be able to put different hats on. You can't just be, oh, you mustn't have that. You must have bread and water. It's not that type of a service. Never was while I was in it. When they had the amenities that they needed, everything was fine. We're rehabilitating. But when you run on a business plan, rehabilitating your customers in a prison service as a business plan isn't the right thing to do, because if you rehabilitate your customers, they don't come back. That means we lose custom. That means we lose money. So when you've got an SMT who's money-based like that, it doesn't matter about the staff and it doesn't matter about the prisoners.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about there is like something that I already mentioned. So let's bring it back to that. When you get paternalistic authorities and governments are becoming increasingly paternalistic, and Keir Starmer's a classic example with his Labour Party in power. What they do, they try and shut down dissent, which is what we saw early doors when people, specifically talked about Southport, and then there were arrests. Yeah, Lucy Connolly, 31-month sentence, got overturned. When you shut down dissent like that in order to have control, what you do, the unintended and often unforeseen consequence is that by turning people into passive and compliant chimpanzees, you kind of, in the short term, you get what you want. But those compliant, passive chimpanzees all become performers. Or, look at things like a seal, and they're clapping their flippers together and arf, arf, right? So you get what you want on one level, you get the control, you silence the dissent, and you run the steamroller through town. Job done in the short term. But the consequences for culture are spectacularly bad. And when you have a bunch of people like that just acting, well, you'll get prison officers, the vast majority of whom will be conforming, following the authorities they've been taught to, not rocking the boat, because they're thinking about paying the mortgage. So I just keep my gob shut. I see work as an imposed prison sentence, 40 hours for most people. Maybe some people get as little as 30, or some are fortunate enough to work part-time. They see everything outside the job as freedom from oppression, even though it isn't. And they have the holiday mentality and living for the weekend and so on. But it all becomes, when they're successful, this policy of shutting people down, it has an impact on the culture much greater than they could even have imagined, because it's like a cancer. It spreads everywhere. And then in work, you get people who are not conscientious. They're looking sideways, going, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Nobody challenges not just the government, nobody challenges the operational culture in the NHS or any other business. Everybody seeks not to rock the boat. Everybody becomes a yes man. You remember that movie that Jim Carrey was in about, Yes Man? It was a pretty interesting little treatment of that. Well, once that spreads from a few individuals because of an oppressive government that's paternalistic and is sort of steamrolling things through, once that spreads, like Jesus said, a little leaven leavens the whole lump of dough. So what we're now doing, we're inheriting a cataclysmic period of people having been de-skilled. People are not empowered to have skills, and not empowered to use their creativity. When you started using the Suno apps, what happened? Your dormant skill set came alive again. Your love and passion for life began to come alive again. And then look, all your backgrounds on the video now, it's like creative stuff, designing stuff, and the music that goes with that, taking some of your poems that you've written in the past, putting them to music. Suddenly you come alive and you're more and more productive. So when we have a culture that promotes this in people rather than shutting it down, the people wake up. It's not because you told them that the Epstein issue is either true or false or somewhere in between, or Q's got the answer, which is all distraction because it's all non-verifiable. It's always future faking crap that never actually happens and keeps everybody hanging on to the drama week in, week out, for the next installment. Meanwhile, back on planet Earth, nothing happens. And what it does, it stops people from being embodied in their own life. They're living in fear. They're living in reactivity. It's psychologically unhealthy. Then when people become mentally unwell and, destabilized, non-productive, what happens? Massive burden on the welfare state. Everyone disempowered. Nobody able to hold down jobs. Nobody encouraged to use the skill sets and creativity. That's what, no matter what you think about China, that the Chinese have been doing. They've been unlocking a lot of the potential of their own people. And they don't use TikTok to see the kind of stuff that we see. They use it to educate the kids. So they're engaged in fifth generation culture warfare, trying to undermine the West by using social media in ways that are destructive to Western culture, while they promote and develop their own culture. So we can see the consequences of it. They're developing high-speed rail networks, developing the infrastructure. Yeah, there's some oppression in there. All governments are oppressive. You win some, you lose some. But compared to what we're getting over here, we malign the Chinese, while the Chinese are doing a lot better job than we're doing. We're far more oppressive. So, yeah, there's some really big issues here, but it all comes back to the fact that we've been trained to be chimpanzees, de-skilled and disempowered. Now, what's the solution to that? If you think you're going to get into a job and someone's going to start in that job, promoting you, developing your creativity, you're wrong. Most of them are going to have the foot on your bed, stopping you climbing up the greasy pole. So we've got to reverse that right across the culture, not just in politics and government.
When you mentioned about the Chinese model, and they are teaching us all to be like chimpanzees, but when we look at the Chinese model and we see, well, obviously there's oppression in the Chinese government, from the Chinese government, but we're seeing, because of the social credit system, we're seeing people who are being excluded from society. They're sleeping on streets. There's a massive homeless problem that is starting to develop in China because people can't afford. They're being deselected down the social scale. Well, this is the upside down world's sifting of the wheat and the chaff. They want all the chaff down, but then they don't want any wheat. So what we're seeing as on oppression, we're seeing it constantly go through, no matter what it is. We've gone to court, we've decided to know what a woman is, but these policies about, it was only the other day that in this country, there's a teacher who has an office that's attached to a classroom, and the 14-year-old boy who identifies as a cat has a litter tray in there and can do number one and number two in the teacher's office. Now, again, do the Chinese do that? Do the Chinese allow stuff like that? No. But they're wanting to put this division and then get us all onto this social credit. If they get this slide in, that's when they'll crash the economy. They're going to be reluctant to crash the dollar and the economy until they get that, because people are going to want to know, to get back into what they used to do, which was barter with a few quid here and there. Well, if that goes, then it's going to be bartering for different things. Well, if you've got a digital system and people's lifestyle don't need to really change, because the government will help you by giving you all the money, because it's not our money that the government spends and gives out to all these people. 500 billion going to the Ukraine. I think it's our money, that, apparently, Alex, but we can't mention it. What are you doing spending money on that? You're racist. What? We're going deep into this upside down world now, mate.
Yeah. Well, of course, Jesus himself spoke about an upside down kingdom, didn't he? He said, he who is greatest among you will be servant of all. He washed the disciples' feet. We've talked about this several times. So, yeah, we've also looked at it last year when we were down in Ilfracombe, and the fancy word for it is inversion. And we looked, from the book of Genesis onwards, and what God's order was supposed to be like in order to function properly, this world to function in the way he designed it. And inversion comes in, turns it on its head, deranges everything. So scientists call that entropy on a physical level. They claim in the second law of thermodynamics that everything tends from a state of order to a state of disorder. Regardless of how scientifically warranted that is in practice, it certainly does describe processes of decay that we see in things like cellular death, apoptosis, and ultimately the final demise of the body. So there is a principle of decay that operates. We know that life makes way for death. Nothing lives forever. And the claim was at one time that there was an ideal state where people did. And even in the Genesis accounts, which might be considered by many to be mythological, the great patriarchs before Abraham were living several hundred years, and the sense over time is that the lifespan gets reduced, and God says, I will not suffer my spirit to abide with man forever. Then eventually it comes down to 70 years and 10. But for a time, it was a couple of 100 years, then 120 years was the norm. Now we've got the 70 year and 10, and with the vaccines, they're hoping to probably get it back down to the lowest one that we've had in recent times, so that what was supposed to be a rate of longevity that was going up is now, because of the vaccine, starting to come down. So we can see that there's been an erosion of the quality of human life. There's been an acceleration of entropy and decay, and that process seems to be being sped up again. So, what do we do about that as individual human beings? It's very difficult, because if it's actually in the fabric of reality, it's not like you can gouge it out, So what is it that we have to do? We've used the word remedy, in legal terms. What's the remedy in psychological, existential, spiritual terms? What's the remedy to turn that ship around? Or is there not one?
For me, it's humbling. While you think that you have still got something that you can do to make this right, or do this or do that, you're going to do it. I did everything I could. You can't do more than have remedy, Alex. If you've got remedy, you've got remedy. In a courtroom, when they say Mr. Webster's got a remedy, that means I've brought a cure to this court, to this game. I've got the cure here. But you can just ignore that. That's where we get this disparity, because people say that there's no such thing as a legal fraud. It's either fraud or it's legal. No, it's a fraud in legal terms, but it's not a fraud until it's pointed out. Once it's pointed out, then it's fraud. But the factor is that we have already acted, at least up to a certain level, And it's like in the old days when the debt collectors are ringing you up. Oh, I'll tell you what, just pay £1. Just pay £1 for now until we sort it out. You pay £1. That's it. That's your debt. You're not going to pay £1 on you something you don't owe. So we've got this. I don't know how to put it. We've got this anchor, this chain that breaks, that keeps us anchored there, and we have to break these chains in order to be able to get free of that, get to a real lawful court, open it, and get these people dealt with. But there's no point going to court with utility companies. They're acting on government policy. So government is actually acting as a sovereign in business, which is what they're allowed to do. They're meant to work for us and our benefit. The problem that we've got is they're not. They're working for themselves and other benefactors, and we're paying for it all. And that's the issue that you've got. Once it's put in front of people and they don't rectify it, because, it's only an error if you don't rectify it. It only becomes a mistake when you don't rectify it. The problem is they can't rectify it because the cat's out the bag then. I mean, for me, the cat's been out the bag 15 years. But people didn't want to hear it meowing. Now they're looking for the cat.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Well,
I think,
let's go on, sorry.
I just wanted to say that, if we're going to move from a simulation, which is what we're talking about really, then we need to move from simulation to actually participating. But the question is like, well, what does that mean? Well, first of all, we've got to stop selling a counterfeit, because, there's a counterfeit version going around in reality.
Now listen carefully.
As long as we buy into it,
only for the
Tony
Brits.
Blair, who's a very evil.
Sorry, mate.
All right. As long as we buy into it, then we're passing it on. We're selling it as well. It's like a cultural contagion that gets passed along. Now, at the end of the day, the church has been at fault in many ways because it's tried to turn Christian faith into some sort of eternal life insurance policy, as if that's all it was about. And it sold it on that basis. Yeah, buy your insurance policy here, and then you'll be fine. Your house is insured and you can do whatever you want after that. But really, it's about how you live in terms of your embodied response to God. Yeah. And he's a God who bled to restore the real cosmic song, talking about producing music, beauty, and creativity. It's like a cosmic song. It's like a tuning fork. And while we're not in the real, while we're in the counterfeit, everything carries that frequency. So in the church, the preaching and the liturgy and all the stuff that happens in the church, right? It's not about preaching to people more fear, but it's about pointing out who Jesus Christ is. Yeah. And that basically, he doesn't just want to give us an insurance policy for eternity. He wants to transform. He wants to transform people, radically transform people. The church is completely sold out on that message, and he just sells it as like, deliver these tracts, say the right creed, respond to Jesus in this way. That is an artificial form of Christianity that seems to be the highest vision of the churches, and it's tepid, it's powerless, it's weak. It's like it's the form of godliness, but denying the power thereof that the Apostle Paul spoke of. It's only when it's alive and real that it's going to make a difference. So you've really got to crown the message, take the fear off our heads and crown it again with what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be living right and embodied life under Christ. And the thing is then, you've got to see it not just as an individual being saved, it's redeeming. God wants to redeem everything. He wants to turn everything that got turned on its head the right way up again. And that's the only way, actually, that you'll get true healing in culture, because society is broken. Everybody knows it's broken. Like, I've only been out about 3 days since last Monday. I went out Monday, I went out Thursday, and I went out today briefly for some food. I've been in the cave, and it's been fantastic. right? But when I came home today from getting me shopping, I saw one at Neighbours and he was proper worn down. He looked ill. And all he was doing was complain about the state of the world. He was proper crushed. Now, in the past, I'd have put my arm, well, not literally, but metaphorically, I'd have put an arm around him and tried to cheer him up. But I just didn't bother, not because I was callous. But I thought, well, all he's doing is describing the inevitable, and he doesn't have an answer. He doesn't know how to buttress himself from that situation.
That's what I was meaning. I mean, it wasn't that I wouldn't have been open to that. It's just I was so focused on this world, all the legal stuff, you know, from overdrafts to mortgages to utility bills to council tax. When you're in the middle of all that and you're seeing that everybody pays this, everybody's shouting at me for saying you shouldn't be paying this. Oh, family and friends are attacking you because you're saying you shouldn't pay for these things that you're struggling with. It's not the right thing to do in this economy. But they don't believe you. I can't be right. I have to be wrong again. I have that so much that you know, I had to keep going away, Alex, and keep going. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll keep going. I remember when the first radio show I went on in 2014 was Vinnie Eastwood's radio show. And I went on there, and even early doors people then who'd touched on the bills of exchange could understand it. But the mass majority didn't care. It wasn't that they couldn't understand it, they didn't care. And I couldn't get my head around that, because if I owe certain people a £5, they won't let me forget. They'll keep saying, hey, don't forget that £5. But your utility companies are ripping you off, but you're willing to do that. Council tax doesn't apply to your property, but you're paying it, and you'll argue with me over it. That really set me to understand that truly you're on your own in the middle of all this. There's nothing here. What else do I do? I've no support, no nothing, because we're all, you know, fragmented and we're all over the place. Without the internet pulling those people together, nothing would have happened. And they've had it all their own way all this time. We say that, you know, we talk about we're meant to live in alignment with the will of God and follow that path. If we stay in that frequency, then everything will be fine. But this fractured reality is so warped. You're like that as soon as you wake up, and you can't. You've got to come to just that, and it's not an easy thing to do, Alex. When you're under, you said, how many people are able to go into a cave for a week? Not many people do that. And what it was with me is I could understand all this worldly stuff, but the weight of understanding it was so heavy. It was drowning, it was suffocating, and nobody would take any of that off me. They were just adding to it. You know, this was worse than Job's comforters. They were, you know, I was even described in a conversation that I only half heard as somebody else saying, well, he took things on that he shouldn't have took on, but, you know, he had principles. What are you doing saying that I've got principles about not paying for bills that I shouldn't pay? I've got those principles, but you haven't. And you're thinking, this doesn't fit. But 18 cans of Stella, couldn't get drunk, didn't want to be here. I was humbled. Bang. That was it. It is done. And I went, oh, so how does all this stuff fit together now? Hence what we're doing here. Because, you know, if we look around everything, it's all about Satan. Everybody's got Satan and devils and demons on everything, you know. Well, what's the opposite? Nobody believes in Jesus, but you believe in the devil. Nobody believes in God. I don't know what it is. Because, as you said, all the mainstream denominational churches all preach the same crap. It's lukewarm rubbish. There's no salvation to be heard in these churches. I see on these groups all the time. What's missing from the church? God, gospel. Let's start with those two. But people say, oh, well, I know the gospel, Jesus died for my sins. Well, that's great. And Jesus is love. Well, that's great. And I'm meant to do nice things and be loving towards people. Well, that's great. What else did he say? Did he say there's any conditions? No, it's unconditional. That's not true. Read your Bible. There's conditions. You know, it's not all salvation. It's not all going to take your salvation. You know, everybody will say that once you're in God's hands, nobody can take you out of his hands. You can jump from that palm. You can get out of there. What if you don't know that there's some things that you are verboten that you can't do? Not because God says, oh, I'll shout at you, but because it's not good for you. You know, we talk about, I was having a conversation about pigs, you know, and eating bacon, stuff like that. And I said, well, I stopped eating bacon before I was born again, when I became vegetarian, because I was reading about how, you know, we always had that term that, oh, I'm sweating like a pig. Well, pigs don't sweat. So all the toxins stay in the meat and the flesh. So when you eat that, no matter how well you cook it, you're taking parasites in. And parasites like pigs' bodies, and seeing as our DNA is not too dissimilar to pigs because we're having heart transplants and things like that coming from pigs, then you start to think, hey, that might not be good for me, but it tastes really nice with a bit of ketchup on. But it might not be good. So I made that decision well before. Now, people will point to Paul, and I can't remember what scripture it is, Alex, you know it, but where he's talking about foods, and he says that all food, it's all been made clean. Well, pigs haven't been made clean, but God says, I'm not telling you can't, but it's not good for you. There's things that you can do, but they're not good for you when you do them, especially if you do them over a long run. So again, it was going back to not only basics, it was going back to that childlike understanding and asking questions. Questions I've not asked. Questions I was taught to ask. Why do I pay this bill? Because everybody does. Oh, okay. That's not a good answer, and it's not something that you should accept. We've got to, something's got to give here, Alex. You know, we sit here every week and we debate it. I mean, I've seen in the chat room, we're talking about persons again with the Bible, and I can see how you can correlate the legal person with what is in the Bible, but you're taking something out of the Bible and putting it into something that isn't there. When we're talking about persons in the Bible, we're talking about ethnicities. I'm a descendant of Abraham, so I don't need to know Jesus. That's God has no inkling for persons. Just because you're a Jew or just because you're part of Abraham, I can raise descendants up from these stones from Abraham. So that's the person the biblical stuff is talking about. But we can still transfer that to the legal name and how we operate, because we should be operating Paul, Ben Thomas, or something like that. Because at least if we use that phrase as I am Paul, son of Thomas, then everybody should know by using that I'm not operating in commerce. If I then get my little motor car and put it on the Monopoly board and say, I'm Mr. Webster, I'd like to buy a Mars bar, then what is the problem with that? That was meant to be the system, but the system took over that. That's the Babylon system. You should be able to participate and get out, just like when you walk into a shop. You're participating in bills of exchange. Mars bar, promise, off. Then the man eats the Mars bar. All the business is done. So it's easier to understand it like that with when we split the legal name and the man. But people are walking into these courts and saying things like that, and it just helps them, because The police aren't going to stand there and say, "Oh, could you tell us what you mean? We'll open a full investigation." It would be great if they did, though, Al.
Yeah, I mean, here's the problem as I see it. Like you say, we talk about this regularly, but here's the issue. I'll sort of spell it out. When you say it, right, then people hear what you have to do. Yeah, so the joint gyro, for example, is one example, and they'll hear that and see that as techniques and methods, and this is precisely the problem that we're dealing with. In response to truths, and you can say truths as facts about the world. So again, it's not truth with a moral imperative, right? In response to these truths, people are really getting confused because they're thinking, well, this person said this is the method or technique you use to achieve the result that you want, and that will correct an injustice or a problem or a difficulty that needs correcting. Problem with that is all methods and techniques are performative. Everything that's performative is part of the simulation. So the difficulty is, it's like with creativity. You tend to get one creative person who innovates an idea, and then 1,000 people try and rip it off as quickly as possible by copying the idea and monetizing it. This is a pathological facet of the way our culture has degenerated. So methods and techniques is the staple of people. We teach people methods and techniques. Now, if you teach a plumber the methods and techniques of plumbing, that's fine, because it enables him to use his skills to be an effective plumber. Nothing wrong with those approaches to methods and techniques. But when you're in dealing with the realm of truth and justice and equity and fairness and interpersonal human dynamics and governance, then when you teach people the performative, particularly within legal systems, you're telling them that you need to jump through certain hoops, pull certain levers, push certain buttons to get results. What happens is everybody else wants to buy the manual then that tells them how to do it. Manuals are really common. An instruction set. If you follow these instructions, right, if you put the money in the slot and you pull the gambling machine, it used to be the one-arm bandit before you had buttons, and you'd watch alt reels and you'd be waiting for 3 bells or 3 bars. That's what we have to do. We have to follow this prescription. So the first person, say, who understands that, the pioneer, the innovator, Scott of the Antarctic, right? There he is. He's the one with the originality. Everybody seeks to copy. Nobody understands his conviction. Unless they talk to him, they don't understand why he did it. They just see a figure who gets some public spotlight, who ended up going to the Antarctic and trying to be the first there, and he got beaten by Amundsen. So there you go. He dies. It's like, okay, it all goes down to the folklore. Everyone wants to copy him. Methods and techniques. Methods and techniques. Nobody reconstructs the motivation. Nobody inhabits the space in the same way. And that's the missing ingredient in culture, because most people don't equate or associate truth with presence. So they walk around like a ghost. There's no presence in them. There's no authority. When Jesus walked around amongst the multitudes, it says the people were amazed. They were amazed. They were struck. They were impacted, because he taught us one having authority, and not as the scribes, the dead purveyors of legalistic rituals and scriptural truths, but with no life in it. And then, the people were gobsmacked again that he booted demons out. He had the authority, he had the presence of God was with him, right? So the problem with the culture we live in now is not only is it fake and inauthentic, it's all based on procedure and method, which is a copycat approach. One originator, one creative person has something vitally important and presence with it, and it makes an impact like Jesus did, and everybody else is playing follow my leader. And Friedrich Nietzsche actually came out with a classic line. He said, and he was talking about, the disciples of gurus, and I don't mean Jesus, disciples of like Muji and others, all these spiritual types, was it Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh and all these ones? He said, one seeks zeros. So a person who wants to be a one, which is a leader, a lot of the time, based on ego and those types of dynamics to get power, they seek zeros, they seek nobodies, and they get loads of nobodies behind them. And the more zeros you have behind the one, the bigger it makes the one look. If you've got 6 zeros behind the one, it's 1,000,000. If you've got 9, it's 1,000,000,000. So get more zeros, and that'll make the one seem even bigger than it is. It'll inflate it. And that's what Nietzsche said. It was a brilliant aphorism. One seeks zeros. Now, unfortunately, it's true, but it shouldn't be. Ones should seek other ones. And every one of those ones should be leading from presence, not just an abstract notion of truth or facts. Not saying, oh, what are the facts there? Let's copy our notes. Can I copy your own work? Hey, brilliant. I got the same mark as you because I copied you. There was nothing original. I was completely sterile, but I jumped through a hoop and I got a result. In the long term, you won't get results. In the short term, you might con a few people. You might seem like you get a result. You might get a few rewards. But the reality is you're building on a dodgy foundation. We've got a whole culture that's building on dodgy foundations. So we have to turn that ship around. And the only people who can do that, there's no method, no technique, no book that's going to change it. It's going to be individuals turning around, realizing what the problem is, and no longer leading fake, inauthentic lives where they're just copycatting other people while complaining about how bad it is. At the end of the day, they're going to have to step up. They can't change it either. This is the whole point about the Christian message. The Spirit comes and gives you that presence because it's the presence of Christ within you. And if you don't have that authority, you're going to be shrinking back or trying to copy or counterfeit or just survive. That's the problem that we've got.
Well, we seem to have got to a bit of an impasse with it because the people who can afford to pay the bills are just going to carry on paying those bills, and it's only starting to eat in at the bottom. But this is where the Martin Niemöller situation is kicking in, because people who don't believe that they need to do anything because it's not affecting them, it's when it comes to them. So it's like when people who say, well, I've not paid council tax for 15 years, and people say, well, how have you managed to rectify that? I just ignore them. Well, that's not rectifying it. You know, we went to court to try and stop council tax. They'll fight for this. We saw how much they'll fight for it, but we needed numbers. How many times have I always said it, Alex? If we'd have had the numbers 10 years ago, we'd have changed all this. People who say that I don't pay for this, I act this way, they don't come and tell people. They don't. I've certainly not met anybody who says, look, this is what I did, bang, 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 this is who I sent it to, these are the addresses, everybody's trying it. I know many people are trying it, and they're getting, as you just said, oh, that looks like a bit of a result, that looks like a win, but it's not until everything's cleared. And it's one of those things that we've got to endure. We've just got to keep going. You can't leave it. When you said about the ones who are always looking for the zeros because the one stands out, we're going back to the Old Testament mentality of, you know, the one-eyed man in the land of the blind is king. Eye for an eye will make everybody blind. So why do you want to look for another one if you've got that type of a mentality, Alex?
Yeah, well, as public notice 4169 said in the chat, I feel we need to regulate emotions first, as it's not wise to shout at a judge about to pass sentence. Now, that scenario is a hypothetical. Probably most people wouldn't shout at the judge, but if they did, they would have lost composure. So the deeper point is that we've got to be regulated. And what does that mean? It means in your central nervous system, you've got to have peace. In other words, you've got to be in the ventral vagal state, not the dorsal state. And if you're in the ventral state, you've got your parasympathetic nervous system is active and you're calm, not the sympathetic nervous system. And obviously with fear and what's happening in the culture, and even the stuff coming back to Andrew, it's all triggering. And watching media that's of that type is triggering. And all the stuff that you find in media, it's all black and white, it's all polarized. So that if you're not in the camp that's articulating the particular message, you're getting all angry at that voice and full of injustice about how corrupt it is and how it's got a platform. Then some people want to shut that down and they get aroused. So they get emotionally dysregulated. And when you're emotionally dysregulated, you're defeated. And that's I think, a very important point that Public Notice 4169 has made there.
Yeah. So we're looking at things on a national, local and national thing, but these political parties that are now rumbling, I know Taylor is going to have something to say about Rupert Law, so I won't. I think he's got something to say about Rupert Law, so I won't touch on that yet. But what I'll do is I'll play these two videos because we're now going to expand onto this international stage. Because, like you said, whatever you believe in, whether you follow Q or you don't follow Q, you can certainly see what Taylor's talking about, where the optics are being presented. It's the truth, what's behind that. It's those Russian dolls that we're always considering. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to do. So we'll start with this one. This is Tucker Carlson, who's does he hold his feet to the fire? Let's have a listen to see what you think.
You've appealed to Genesis. Genesis 15 says it's Abram, it's pre-Abraham, it's Abram, receives from God the news that his descendants will inherit the land. And you tell me as the theologian if I'm getting this wrong, but from the Euphrates to the Nile. I think that's right. And that would include like basically the entire Middle East. That would be the Levant. So that would be Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. It would also be big parts of Saudi Arabia and Iraq. It would be, I mean,
I'm not sure it would go that far. I mean, it would be a big piece of land, but here's the point.
It would be a lot of places that are now countries.
But this particular area that we're talking about now, Israel, is a land that God gave through Abraham to a people that he chose. It was a people, a place, and a purpose. We can look at it that way. Christian Zionism, I want to go back because that's where we started.
I'm not going to let you off on this because you have said 3 times that God gave this land to this people. And so it is entirely fair for me with respect to ask, what land are you talking about? Because I just read Genesis 15, as I have many times. Mm-hmm. And that land, I think it says, from the Nile to the Euphrates, which is, once again, basically the entire Middle East. So God gave that land to his people, the Jews, or he didn't. You're saying he did. What does that mean? Does Israel have the right to that land? Because you're appealing to Genesis.
Yeah.
You're saying that's the original deed.
It would be fine if they took it all.
You've appealed to Genesis. Genesis 15 says it's Abram. It's pre-Abraham. It's Abram.
So, did we hear that right, lads? It's okay for him to take it all. Did we hear that? Sounded like it, didn't it? It's okay for him to take it all. Now, their claim, he said he keeps pointing to Genesis, and he keeps saying God gave the Jews that land. Doesn't say that. It said the land was given to Israel. What is Israel, Alex? Is it those persons that God doesn't have any beef with? A dog in the fight with? They're not. It's not the Jews. You can be a Jew and not be saved if you're talking about ethnicity. And these Jews aren't even from that area. They're from parts of Europe. They've converted. Now they've got this flag that they plant. So if that flag that's planted there that has a star on it, which is a star of Remphan, which was to spit in the face of God, and certainly into Christianity, and then they call it the Star of David. Are they not laughing up the sleeves at us, Alex?
Well, there's definitely something, as we know, that's gone wrong with Zionism. As I mentioned a week or two ago, about its actual origins, what it means. It's a king on the throne of David forever. from a Christian point of view, Jesus fulfilled that. But for Jews at the time who did not accept that Jesus was the Messiah, then different kettle of fish. They're still waiting for, well, technically they are, if they're true to the Old Testament, but reject Jesus. They're waiting for a king to sit on the throne of David forever, and they still believe that this will be a secular operation taking down empires. But we also know that they've changed their approach because of sacking of the Second Temple in AD 70 and the Bar Kokhba revolt. You know, as I've said on a few occasions, Israel was, you know, turned by the Romans into Syria, Palestina. And the modern Pharisees started to talk about a prince of Israel rather than a king, because they realized Jesus had been crucified with title King of the Jews, which the Jews objected to. You know, the ones who helped to make the decision, they objected to the King of the Jews title. Pilate said, "I've written what I've written." So I think at the Bar Kokhba, when they renamed Syria Palestina to try and erase Israel, they also moved the emphasis onto a prince of Israel, which moved them more to a secular approach. So in this checkered history of Israel, and when is Israel not Israel, and when is a Jew an Israeli, and when are they not, and all the lost tribes, it's quite complicated. But like you say, it's not an ethnic thing anymore. But who are the people who actually adhere to Judaism in any meaningful sense these days when they go into the Talmud? And they're not going to their own scripture, or they're going to the rabbi. You know, as we said before, like, you know, Muslims will go to the imam, and he'll go to the Arabic and he'll tell them what to believe. Like in the Catholic Church, before the Reformation, priests had access to the Latin, and they taught the dumb peasants what scripture meant. So you didn't have the problem of many different interpretations, but you also had the problem that if you had one interpretation that was wrong, everybody was imbibing teachings that were wrong. So it was very much a double-edged thing. But when you've got priests teaching, you know, in Latin or reading in Latin and giving straightforward teachings to the people to follow as prescriptions, and when the imams do it, and when the rabbis send people to the Talmud, or like we said, the Hadith for the Muslims, then you are going to get people not accessing the actual scriptures that they claim to believe in, which means they can't measure or test anything according to the standard that they themselves are supposed to be using. So we are going to have distortions because nobody really knows anymore what Zionism is supposed to be. It's become a dirty word. It's become politically infected.
Yeah. Well, the narrative that's going on over there is we're seeing this now play out. Taylor asked through the week if we heard of Rupert Law, because all I could see when Rupert Law started with this political party that he's setting up, everything was Q all around him. So obviously it was very interesting. And then Taylor's asked whether we know him or not. He left Reform to do this because I don't think he's claiming he's got the belief in Reform now, because Reform have definitely changed tack on people. I know that they were definitely voting Reform and now not knowing what to do because of the people that Reform have brought in, the policies that those people were supporting. They don't see any change there. So, you know, it's. I think we're primed. I always said I thought Farage has been our Q, our Trump fella, but no, it's looking like it could be something even bigger.
Isn't that just beautiful?
If you don't love and respect your own culture, and I don't think our leaders love and respect the British people anymore, I think they seem to see the British people as the enemy. They should be serving the British people. It's the British people who built this country into what it is. It's the British people who pay the taxes that funds all these liggers, as I call them, who live on the back of the taxpayer. And there are far too many of them. They don't actually perform a function. They create all sorts of rules, regulations, and laws to justify what they do. But there are far too many of them. And they basically, in my view, they get between the wall and the wallpaper, and they don't help individual relationships throughout the country, which ultimately is the backbone of what we all are. And left to our own devices, I think we've got the best, most decent, most creative, most enterprising people on earth. But we've got the most appalling bunch of lightweights now who are running the country, and they are effectively damaging our interests collectively. So I think that's why I set up Restore Britain. The more people who support Restore Britain, the more we can influence the way in which things go, and hopefully influence it so that we end up with a government that does what it's supposed to do and governs in the interests of the electorate.
There you go.
So they're going to govern in the name of the electorate, like every other politician, leader of a political party that I've ever heard of in my 54 years. Alex, what do you think?
I think that mainstream politics, professional politicians, even if they claim not to have a professional political background, and Rupert Law doesn't, he's a businessman, it doesn't matter. We discovered this with the Liberal Democrats before 2010, when they were talking a good game about what it is to be truly liberal, which should mean, free. And also, expansive. It should be about growth and freedom. Those were the best principles that capitalism had when we first started to trade, that people could trade freely, that they could enhance the quality of life by freely trading, and it's a great idea. But as soon as you got into power, the thumbscrews were on, and it was all policy driven in a particular way. It was policy driven in a way that there was no chance of anything that bucks the system happening. So that it's always the same issue. Reform started off leveraging the voice of disaffected people, but you can see the subtle shifts that have happened. And so now Rupert Law notices that, and he sees an opportunity, and so now he leverages that. So he's not wrong in what he sees. He's not even wrong or insincere in wanting to address it. But the prospects now of one guy who's got a seat in Parliament is no longer Reform having any kind of voice when Reform have struggled, and Reform have had to go super slick. They've started to roll everything out to look like a really professional, multimedia savvy organisation. What they've done, Reform, is they've just got more slick and ahead of the curve with modern techniques and methods than the other parties have. They stole a march on them. And yes, so cosmetically and superficially, it will bang a certain drum, it will hit a certain frequency. Some people will believe it's going to be the remedy, but they're already starting to take on the shape and contours of a traditional political party. We know what Farage was saying about vaccines, what he said to Andrew Bridgen, don't make a big deal out of it. He also won't be talking about anything to do with commercial jurisdiction. So we know that none of them will go anywhere near that. Neither will Rupert Law. He's a businessman. He's not interested in that stuff. And he'll believe that it's all beside the point. So, yeah, you'll always get something that might be the lesser of several evils, but you won't get true solutions that turn the ship around. But that's because no political structure can address the issue of the heart of a human being.
But that's exactly my point, though, Alex, because he wants a government that works for the people, by the people, and be held accountable. Yet that government is making people, through policy, pay for gas, water, and electric that they shouldn't be paying, and council tax that doesn't apply. Now, that's all based on presumption. So we should be able to put this political party in and change that. But as you just said, they only want to change what everybody's arguing about. If you lowered their bills, it would be better. They'd accept it. So I think there's still a conversation to be had, but I think you're right. I think what they'll do is they'll ride this wave in and possibly get in, and then then we're going to have to see how the land lies when the waves settle down. Good evening, Uni Blacksister. Taylor, how are you doing?
Fine. How about you?
I'm okay, mate. What have you got for us? I don't know how much you've actually heard. So
I've been here the whole time.
okay, so what's happening then?
It's been a fun week. That's all I can say. It's been a fun week when it comes to the what's it called, the geopolitical scene. It's been it's been interesting. I'm sure you've heard about the Andrew thing, obviously. Oh man,
I'll tell you what I found more interesting, Taylor, was Hillary Clinton saying, "I'm not even sure if I've ever met Jeffrey Epstein, but my husband did fly on his plane a few times for charitable reasons."
Oh, that was, yeah, I saw that too. That was pretty funny. Oh man, I mean, maybe that's them hinting that they're going to come out with the fact that the Clintons never actually liked each other. They only got a marriage just for political reasons. That's the whole reason they had Chelsea Clinton as well, because at the time you still had to at least present yourself as to be looking like at least somewhat conservative, be able to win votes, especially in the South.
Yeah, no, but at that point, you couldn't cut the face off a 9-year-old girl and wear it and get elected, really, could you?
Well, no, of course not. If it was for oh my god. And by the way, that's frazzle drip. You asked last week what frazzle drip is. That's exactly what that is.
I didn't ask what frazzle drip was. I knew what it was. It's other people don't know what that is.
That's what you meant. Okay. Well, it's anyone who doesn't know. Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay. So, what have you got something to to present, or are you just here to chat tonight?
No, I got something. I got something to present, of course.
Come on, then. This is your bit. You always have your chance. We don't always agree, but you've got your bit.
Yeah. Okay. Just give me a second to pull up my thing. I should say, by the way, oh my goodness, just and it's not just Andrew. There's so much more. Like, oh my goodness, this whole thing with the with the stuff coming out about the Epstein stuff is just it's so brilliant. It's so brilliantly done. It really is. Why won't this freaking thing open? Oh, okay. You know what? We'll do this article first, just because why not? Since we're on the subject anyway. All right, you see it? Okay, yeah. So here we go. Oh man, I was chuckling to myself when I heard about this. New York Times: former Prince Andrew is accused of misconduct in public office. But before I continue, by the way, this is the younger brother of Charles, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. Because whenever I hear Prince Andrew, I just think of one of those Diana's kids for some reason. I don't know why.
No, that's William and Harry.
William and Harry. Okay, good. Okay, thank you for letting me know. Okay. In Britain, the offense carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. No case has ever tested whether a member of Britain's royal family could be considered a public officer. Oh, man. Since the respective 2019 and 2020 arrests of Mossad agents Epstein and Maxwell themselves, we now have the first arrest play acted associated with the central issue, Epstein Island, which Q Posts told us would be the keystone leading to the pulling down replayed of the entire diseased, corrupt temple that is the New World Order. The demonic character playing the de-princed Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, I hope I pronounced that right,
yeah,
has been arrested on his 66th birthday, by the way. Very that's what we call a little calm right there. Just using their own little number scheme against them.
Hey, well, to add to that, we had there was an article that went quite viral a while back, where horses had got loose out the royal stables, and one was covered in red all down its neck.
Oh, I saw that. I saw it was covered in blood.
Allegedly, that was 660 days previous to him being arrested on his 66th birthday.
These guys are hilarious. They're using it's just like Q said, symbolism will be their downfall. They're basically trolling, using their own symbolism against them, which is awesome. Oh man! But continuing, and is being investigated for misconduct in public office. Ironically, because all criminal cases in Britain are brought in the name of the monarch, listed as Rex, when Andy is prosecuted, it will be in his brother's name, King Charles, also dead, versus Andrew. This story further confirms the obvious fact that the broader scandal of Epstein/Mossad Island is not going away. To the contrary, the make-believe arrest of this make-believe character is already amplifying the growing question as to why no one in the United States has been rounded up yet. The left-right pressure on Trump and Bondi to come clean will only intensify, and that's exactly what the scriptwriters at White Hat Productions want. We are already far beyond the point where any rational person can link the coming disclosures and consequences to a Trumpian revenge plot. How various deranged libtards, Magadonians, Sunshine Patriots, and Black Pill addicts still cannot see the game of Brer Rabbit here is as amusing as it is astonishing to behold, which only goes to show how well Q/White Hat Productions understood mass psychology. Indeed, as Q had foretold us many times, it had to be this way. And here's an interesting picture, by the way, of Epstein's temple. The wedge, Q made it clear that the keystone is Epstein Island. The wedge-shaped keystone is the central stabilizing support that holds all the other stones of the arch together. In the metaphorical sense, it's the most important part of a system. Remove it, and the whole structure collapses. Epstein's Israeli-themed temple has an arch with a keystone. And I should also mention, what are the colors of this keystone?
Same colors as the Ellen DeGeneres stage.
Oh yeah, but also, which flag does this happen to look like?
Do they wear small hats?
Yes. Yes. Oh, it's so good. It's just so good. This is all coming out now. Oh my goodness. It's amazing.
Taylor, at this point though, we must put in place that this could be coming out just for that reason. That's plausible, isn't it?
Oh yeah, you have to link the Israeli connection somehow, because we know that Epstein wasn't at the top in the first place. As a matter of fact, I'm going to throw this out there.
We're being told that he works for the Russians, mate.
Well, you have to start somewhere, because people hate Russians for some dumb reason because of propaganda.
Yeah, but they don't wear small hats.
Well, maybe a few of them do. Who knows? But yeah, get the point. Anyway, so this whole thing is like, I'm just gonna throw this out there, and I know probably not many people will agree with this. I personally don't, but it is a possibility that perhaps Epstein himself was blackmailed and did not choose to go down this path, and that he was just put in place under blackmail himself as a scapegoat. That's entirely possible.
I would say that Ghislaine, I would say that she is Epstein's handler. I would say she was higher up than Epstein.
Oh yeah, she was, absolutely. I mean, we'll get to that in a second, by the way, because I got another article I want to look at as well, which is connected to this. But let's finish this one up. Andrew is just the opening act of the many arrests and shocking information to follow. And this is from good old Mike Flynn. If the Brits can arrest a royal, why can't America arrest, insert name here, provide a name please, Army Intel man General Flynn plays the game of pressuring, quote-unquote, the quote-unquote reluctant Trump and Bondi to start arresting people. Will there continued cover up in quotes forced military action as libtards cheer? Lol. It is lol, I'm not gonna lie. Speaking of Q, with regard to the United Kingdom, posted below are some Q posts which have aged very, very well. These image and text posts from 2018 to 2019, combined with what just happened, explain how it came to be that the once untouchable House of Windsor, dispossessed junior partners of the House of Rothschild, have in recent years suddenly and seemingly inexplicably lost their protection. Funny how that keeps happening to so many of the elite, isn't it? Parenthetical clarifications added. Q post 607. POTUS, President of the United States, statement and focus on the UK should scare a lot of people. It signifies something very important. Very, very, very important. Q post 608, the following post. MI6, British military intel, played ball. They did the spying for us on the citizens at our direction, as they always do. They ratted out their deep state masters. Q. And by the way, whenever Q asks a question, either means that he's asking you to do your research, or he's just telling you straight out, but has to put a question mark there for legal reasons.
How do you know he's a he?
I guess it could be a they.
Did you just genderize Q?
Yeah, I guess I just did. You can cancel me now. Oh my goodness. Okay, Q post 620. UK Prime Minister Theresa May is neutralized. MI6 British intel undergoing house cleaning. Queen/monarch seeking shelter. Patience. These people are stupid. So we know at this time, this is way back in 2018, 2019, the MI6 and the British Prime Minister and the Windsor family were all being dealt with, which is amazing. And then all the way in Q post 3152, Prince Andrew is deeply connected to Rachel Chandler, satanic child trafficker. Prince Andrew is deeply connected.
Child handler Chandler.
Yep, exactly. Yes, thank you. Exactly. Trust the plan to pass some freshly popped popcorn. Look at this disgustingness. The murderers of Diana got
a good job he didn't like to party.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's Philip, right? On the right.
That's Philip and Liz and Charlie at the end.
Yeah. I'm about to say, look how demonic this man looks.
Well, Philip was quoted as saying that when he died,
want to come back as a virus?
They believe in reincarnation. When he died, he wants to come back as a virus.
Yeah, to kill off a whole bunch of people. Yeah, I know that quote. The murderers of Diana got what was coming to them. Not only did Q tell us that the evil royals were being hunted, but numerous other comms from Trump himself, as well as the funerals of Elizabeth and Philip, hinted at their executions. And I've talked about this in the past when going over when the Queen's funeral happened before. We talked about how the fact of how Trump walked around, was walking in front of the Queen, and then later on in front of Charles. Which obviously, in terms of monarchy standpoint, that's an insult to a sitting monarch. But as we know, the military is in control. This is a worldwide operation. So this is So the point of this article really is to show that the UK is not being forgotten, and neither is the rest of the world. Everything is being taken care of. It's all just a matter of each country having to come along at their own rate, because unfortunately, different populations, different cultures have different levels of indoctrination. In Europe, we have so many of these right-wing type of leaders coming to power. We have Meloni in Italy. We have what's his name in Hungary. I forget his name. In Japan, you just had a brand new conservative prime minister come in. So you have a whole bunch of stuff going on over there. Okay. So there's that. I should also mention, yes, I know that he was let go, that the arrest was quote unquote dropped. But the purpose of this of that whole event, if you ask me, was to show just how corrupt the justice system is, to show that you cannot prosecute these people in a public court. And as Q told us right from the beginning, he asked the audience back in 2017, do we really think that these people, these royals, these politicians can be tried in a civilian court under our current political justice system? Hell no. You know that. You guys know that.
The interesting thing for me was Andrew is being investigated. They want him done for treason. So if they're investigating him for treason, he can't come over to the States to testify in your committee while he's being investigated for treason. So it's to be fair, even though he's crying about it, it's the best thing that could have happened to him, other than him just keep going away with it. Because if it is what we think it is, then he's going to get the public trial, because he's not been disappeared yet, has he? Is that Andrew? Are we looking at the real Andrew? Is the real Andrew in Tel Aviv with Jeffrey? I mean, somebody said that they think they found Ghislaine in Canada. They went up to her and said, "You used to provide us with pizza," and she laughed. So,
oh man,
We don't know. I mean, there's I saw I can't remember his show, High Impact something on YouTube, and he compared the Ghislaine Maxwell who was speaking from jail to the Ghislaine Maxwell before her arrest, and it's a different woman. The nose is different, ears are different, everything. You look at these two pictures and go, that's not the same woman. So
Pretty
again, but this is the point. It's we're at the end of the day, Taylor, from your point of view, because nobody knows. You know, you're saying that these are optics for the normies. No, the normies don't know that. The normies don't know. They think Jeffrey Epstein's dead. They don't think there's a possible chance that he's living it up in Tel Aviv and somebody else. You know, they don't think that. So
no, they don't. But that's not the point.
Well, it is the point, because at the end of the day, when this truth comes out, people are going to want justice. So are you going to, not you, but is Q going to have to then say, this is what we did. We took them to the Guantanamo. We did this. We tried them in military courts. And then we substituted them so that you wouldn't panic and all that. Is that what you're hinting at?
Basically, well, here's the thing: everything that we're seeing is all the public replay, because you have to share this out with the normies in a way that they'll be able to understand, in a way that not only they'll accept, but in a way that won't break them, because normies are very fragile. So this is a very delicate process, and the fact is we're getting really, really close to the justice phase. How exactly they're going to do it, I don't know, but it's looking increasingly likely that they're going to they're going to try them openly in military courts rather than civilian courts, because as we know, and what they're clearly trying to tell the public right now, is that the civilian justice system is corrupted beyond all recognition, that nothing can be done when trying to go through that system. And that, which is another reason why they've been pushing the migrant crisis and the LGBT crisis for the last 4 years, so hard for the past 4 years, is because it's another thing they're trying to show the public, that the civilian justice system is corrupt, and that you're not going to try and arrest or prosecute anybody of a high level, because obviously in years past they've taken their paychecks from the same people you're trying to arrest. Like, you know, in the UK, for example, the royal family, they own the court system, the civilian court system. So that's the whole thing. You have to show, you know, as usual, you can't tell people, you have to show them just how corrupt the system is. And then after that, you have to give them the answer that they need.
The royals don't own the court system, mate. They're just figureheads. They don't do anything other than.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, they're only figureheads of state. Our judicial system is run by the Privy Council, which are non-elected peers. You know, these are the ones who we fund. They live their lifestyles thanks to the public purse. No, they're not held accountable. But as you just said, people will point to the royal family and say, what are you doing? Why are you not doing this? Because some laws need royal assent. Well, Charles has given royal assent to legislative laws that if we do not correct this jurisdiction, we're pretty much going to be in trouble. Have you got something to share there?
Yeah, I got one more. I got one more that I want to go over before, because we are running low on time. So
yeah,
there is one more. So there's one more that I want to get to, and this one I feel like is possibly even bigger than the Andrews thing. Oh my goodness! I wanted to scream out loud when I heard about this. Oh my goodness! New York Times ex-CEO Wexner says Epstein conned him, but Democrats are skeptical. How Jeffrey Epstein used the billionaire behind Victoria's Secret for wealth and women. Jeffrey Epstein drafted letters to men like the retail billionaire Leslie Wexner, in which he hinted at shared secrets. Oh, yes.
Victoria's Secret. I wonder what the secret is.
Oh, yeah. You know what the secret is.
I
Oh, my
know what the
goodness.
secret is.
Oh, yeah. Cabal / Mossad millionaire Les Wexner of Victoria's Secret fame is now, in quotes, Les Wexner. Who knows if it's really, it's most likely not him, but who knows? That's not important. Therefore, brief snippets from the imaginary 5-hour closed door roasting which his military imposter faced before Democrats with a Q on the House Oversight Committee are all for show, but what a show it was. First of all, just the fact that the name Wexner / Wexner has been mainstream marks an important escalation in the scripted unfolding of the Epstein Endgame drama. You see, it was Wexner's island all along. The perverted math teacher from New York was only a hired hand, with Ghislaine Maxwell acting as the go-between linking the whole thing to the House of Rothschild. There we go. The beginning of the Epstein Endgame is playing out beautifully by having Democrats take the lead domestically while foreign governments investigate and arrest VIPs on the international front. President Donald Trump, the producer of it all, is by now perceived to be as far removed from the public unraveling of this monstrous scandal as President George Washington. Epstein truth isn't political. It's a bipartisan and multinational thing, don't you know? This strategic decoupling from Trump and his right-wing conspiracy theorists is exactly what Q told us was going to happen. And this is Q Post 3875 from February 20th, 2019. Epstein, Wexner. The story goes much deeper, darker. And here's the infamous, here's the now infamous line that's, it's been turned into a meme all over social media, especially Twitter. Fake hot mic theater Les Wexner's attorney threatens to... Set? Well, what?
I'm saying, yeah, seen that one.
Oh my goodness. Where he threatens to, in quotes, fucking kill, end quote, his client for talking too much. The Rothschild coat of arms was granted to the family by the stupid Emperor of Austria in 1822 when he made them barons. Holy shit. Did Wexner just mention the Rothschilds? Speaking of the Rothschilds, a name that only the most marginalized anti-Semitic conspiracy theorists would have dared to utter in past years, that wretched family was not only mentioned by Wexner during his make-believe inquisition, but re-mentioned by several news sources, most notably Fox. Second time in the span of 10 days, by the way. Yes, Wexner in passing actually revealed that Epstein had business connections to the Rothschild family, as well as Jeff Bezos and Google. Once again, our friend Q, posting at a time, 2017 and 2018, when even most conspiracy theorists were still ignorant of Epstein Island and its full scope of evil and treachery, repeatedly called out, aka threatened, this very cast of characters by name. Epstein, Maxwell, Wexner, Bezos, Schmidt, Google, Prince Andrew, and several Rothschild family members. And now, look at the players in the news these days. Funny how that happened. It'll only get worse. The recent name drops of formal untouchables such as Wexner and Rothschild are music to the ears, but the one name which advanced Q-tards anxiously await to be dropped, more so than any other, is that of Rachel Chandler, as you just said. Rachel Child's handler, exactly. That's because we were told, specifically in Q Post 3136, which is down here, to watch the news for the introduction of this mysterious character who is a satanic baby and child trafficker to the stars. The sudden introduction of the monster Chandler will be the ultimate signal for the Q brigades to mount up and charge toward the sound of the guns, in quotes. Marjorie Taylor Greene, with a Q, already dropped her name in an X/tweet not too long ago. We were further told by Q that Andrew was deeply connected to Chandler in the 2 Q posts that I just read. And Andrew is now all over the news. We're getting close. Pass the popcorn. Yes, and here's 3136 from March 20th, 2019. If the records become unsealed, much will be revealed. Watch the news for Rachel Chandler. Now, this is just a hypothesis for me. This is not a prediction. This is just a hypothesis. This could possibly be a comm for a future proofs past, in that March 20th this year might have something to do with Rachel Chandler. Again, this is just pure speculation. I'm not predicting the future, just giving out a possibility. Satanic monster Rachel Chandler's social media posts, reposted by Q. With Bill Clinton aboard Epstein's plane, the underground rooms beneath Epstein's temple show captive children. Chandler and friends with a baby who is to be tortured and eaten, we presume, and children raised in satanic culture stage mock ritual killing inside of a pentagram. This is absolutely disgusting, by the way. It just makes me sick. Makes anyone sick, I'm sure. These are all pictures that Q posted because, as Q told us, these people are stupid. They were so damn arrogant. What they would do is they would take their damn phones to Epstein's Island and they would take pictures and videos on them. And on top of that, a lot of them would post them on social media. Like on Snapchat or Telegram, Snapchat, Instagram, stuff like that, Facebook. Just because these people were so damn arrogant and stupid, just as Q told us, and now all this stuff is finally coming out. To what extent, I don't know, but hopefully we get the full thing, because once this evil satanic witch finally comes out into the mainstream, oh my goodness, that's going to be so damn good. I should also mention, by the way, that Wexner, since he's we've known about him. Hardcore Q people have known about Wexner for almost a decade now. The fact this is all just coming out now, man, it proves this is yet another Q proof that he told us, that the Q team told us what was going to happen. It's absolutely amazing. But hopefully this stuff comes out. Hopefully it just keeps going, man, because this is absolutely amazing. And oh my goodness, let's just see where this goes from here, because oh my goodness.
Yeah, I can see what you're doing, but we're looking forward to seeing what's going on here. Here's just this is the photograph of her speaking from jail. This is what she's going to testify in the committee. This is before she went to jail. You can quite clearly see that looks like a different woman to me. And Taylor, that's the one that somebody took a couple of days back on video in Canada, claiming that was Ghislaine. So, we've got all this. We really have got all these questions going on. We've not really got many answers to go with them yet. But the thing is, we've got to keep asking those questions and see what happens. If somebody had told me last week that Prince Andrew would have been arrested this week before, that Andrew would have been arrested, I'd have gone, yeah, I'm not sure about that. And I'm still not sure. We're watching it. We are watching it, but whether that's a true, what we call an arrest, poor Lucy Connolly got arrested for a tweet. And, she was jailed for 18 months or something like that, just for a naughty tweet. We're talking Prince Andrew doing all this kind of sexual deviancy, but we're talking treason over here, over being the trade envoy and giving trade secrets. It's something that certainly something we've got to understand. We might be being distracted to something.
Let me just mention that actually about that. I think I understand the reason why they brought up the traitor charges rather than the connection to Epstein charges. That being that, unfortunately, the unfortunate thing about the justice system is that, and I'm not sure if you know this or not, but being a traitor, giving state secrets away to a foreign nation, it actually in the legal system is actually gets you more punishment than diddling with children. I'm not kidding. I looked it up. It's true. So
it was punishable by death. But the problem that you've got is that he can't come over and speak to your committee like the Clintons and that want to now. We've got Joy, is it Joyce Bayer or Joy Bayer off The View, and Whoopi Goldberg, both crying and saying why they were in the emails because they went to a party that these people would once attended. Then you've got all these other who are denying. So we're being distracted with Andrew. I know we're being distracted with Andrew. So do you want to just wrap up, Taylor, then, and see if you? I know you don't do predictions, but see if you can tell us anything that you think is, imminent with what's gone on.
Well, I think we're going to continue to see more of the same. I will say though that the storyline of this movie keeps on changing, right? It keeps on switching between different subplots, different plot lines. Like a month ago we were talking about the riots in Minneapolis, and then we started talking about the election fraud in Georgia, and now we're talking about all of these released, heavily redacted, yes, but released Epstein files. And on top of that, we have news of Israel coming back into the news as well. So, we have all these different plot lines that all have to converge at some point.
Yes, and we certainly have. We've got a lot going on over there in the Middle East.
Absolutely, it's I don't know when that's going to happen. Hopefully, it's very, very soon. But I will say though that every movie has to come to an end eventually, and this is no exception. So the
epilogue.
Oh, the epilogue. Oh my god! Or the deleted scenes.
It's like the streets of San Francisco epilogue.
Oh, actually, yeah. Or we'll get to the deleted scenes. Maybe we'll get the scenes of them chopping the heads off of these. Part of my language, these fucking satanic bastards. Hopefully we get that. I mean, I know that sounds kind of messed up, but like, I want to see these. I want to see these people get executed, man.
I certainly want to see justice, mate.
Absolutely, we all do.
Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Thanks for coming on, Taylor. Thanks for giving up your time again. I know some people don't want to listen to the Epstein stuff and the Q stuff because they've already got their belief system set on that. Me and Alex we've told you we've had open conversations with you about it, but it's still information. People need to. Well, I certainly want to know the information. What I do with it is what I do with it. Put it on the table. If it doesn't fit, keep it on the table unless it doesn't fit and you get rid. But we've got to keep doing it. So thanks for giving up your time, mate. I'll speak to you through the week and send you the link for next week.
All right. There's one small thing that I do want to leave off with though before I go, and that's to everyone here that there's been a new series that started on Rumble by Mike King called called Crash Course on the Q Posts, which basically is going through all the Q posts right from the very beginning, going over each of what they all mean and exactly like how they how they've applied to the events we've already seen and how they're applying to current events, and going in detail. So if you're new to Q, if you're interested, go check that out because I definitely feel like that you will get a lot out of it. I'm learning stuff and I've been a veteran of this for years, so I definitely feel like this could be good for everyone to take a look at. But anyway,
you put it in the chat, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I left it in the chat.
Yeah, I'll give it a look, mate.
All right. Well, I'll see you guys. I'll see you guys again next time. Take care and God bless.
You too, mate. Good night. God bless.
Yep.
In summing up, pal.
Yeah. I'm not gonna. I don't think I'm gonna sum up. I think I'll just give a little anecdote. I'm going to freewheel this. So when I said I'd only been out 3 times this week, like twice was to like shop and eat. And the only major stint I had was when I went out on Thursday and I was doing some home ed for 2 twins. And we didn't get into things too much. We watched the movie Dead Poet Society, which is very interesting, to illustrate stuff about the schooling system. Very much critique, I suppose you could say, of Rockefeller-esque understandings of school as prison. But we start proper this Thursday coming, and I'm doing the anthropology bit, like 17 sessions. And the first one, I'm going to cover Stone Age, Bronze Age, and Iron Age, because it's the beginning of civilization. But it's anthropology is really looking at, you know, theory of man, what is a human being, and all the questions related to that. When did we get here? At what time? You know, in history. And if you're a Christian, you might not believe that evolutionary theory is correct, and therefore you might not believe that the Earth is millions of years old. We don't have definitive answers, but the official position is that the Iron Age had 3 stages to it, and it was like from 2.6 million years to roughly 3,300 years. Regardless of your debate the stats, that would mean that for most of human existence on the face of the Earth, we were in a Stone Age. We were in a relatively unadvanced, undeveloped technological phase where weapons were made from stone. So you had bows and wood, bow and arrow, and so on. Basic ability to hunt. Issues with fire were not at all clear. At some point, the development of fire as a technology happened. And the Bronze Age lasted from about 3,300 BCE to about 1,200, and then it was the Iron Age. And the Iron Age lasted till about 600 to 500 BC, relatively short. And that was when there was a massive rise in empires. And the reason I'm saying this, it's because I'm teaching it. It's brought it to mind. But we read in the early Genesis accounts from Genesis 1 to Genesis 5 about a lot of things that parallel that timeline, and that certainly touch on the transition from Stone Age to Bronze Age, and all the descriptions within their genealogies and the lineages seem to reflect all the stuff around the development. So that was a delay, but so it looks as if there was a theme of the development of technologies, but there was another way to go other than the technological route. Technology isn't bad. People fear it. AI even now think, it's the worst type. It's going to be the Terminator. Skynet becomes conscious, but it's just technology. So we've established many times that technology is neither good nor bad. It holds the potential to be used for either good or bad, and it can be used either way. So
same as information.
So we can look at that, and we can take a balanced view of it. But what we do see, really, not just in Genesis 1 to 5, but right up until the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11, is this idea in Genesis 1 about be fruitful and multiply. Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 are not the same. I'm not going to go into that into too much detail. But Genesis 1 doesn't really talk about, it doesn't talk about Adam and Eve. It talks about the creation of human beings.
It does.
And specifically Adam and Eve are mentioned in Genesis 2. But in Genesis 1:28, that's when be fruitful and multiply is uttered. And it's uttered again after the flood, basically, of Genesis 6. So it seems as if there was a timeline in which technology and cities and this whole development that we see, Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age, empires, modern tech, was something that seemed to generate out of this first emanation of creation. And while it wasn't all bad, it was certainly a technological trajectory. It was certainly based on the Babel idea that if we keep improving and we keep doing better and better and improving technology and developing and growing in this way, which we might say the Enlightenment vision is, that this is the way to thrive. But the other timeline, the one that doesn't come from Cain especially, but the one that comes down from Seth, that's in Genesis 5 rather than Genesis 4, that focuses on covenant, and covenant is all about basically resting in God's presence, abiding in relationship with God, and that's the closest we can remain to the state that Eden was. So Eden and paradise is alignment with God, trusting in his presence. The other timeline is what's given us technology, both the good and the bad. But that timeline is always trying to reach up under its own merits, wanting to live forever, wanting to improve the technology. And then, of course, it gets colonized by elites who want some of them to live forever, namely them, and us not to live forever. So they use the technology against us with mRNA and so on and so forth. So that becomes a battlefield where we sold technology, but there are people manipulating the technology to their own advantage and against us. And that's what happens when you think that knowledge through technology and power and development is the holy grail. It isn't. If humans were not corrupted, it could be, but humans are corrupted, and that power corrupts the possibilities of technology as well. So the other timeline is trusting in God's presence, walking like Enoch did with God 365 years every day, staying close to God, trusting the promise. That's the only way to be totally on a different path, which we might claim, if we were quoting Jesus, that the first path I talked about was the broad path that leads to destruction and many of those who travel by it. And that second path has always been there. It's always been defined. It should be the path where people come to Jesus, and it says, he says, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. It should be the path that brings that about, but it's the path that gets persecuted. Meanwhile, the other path is where all the depravity is, all the corruption is. Yes, there are the advantages and possibilities of technology, but also out of technology, as we found with the Zazel, war as well as tools, there were weapons. So everything could get corrupted on that timeline. So the question for me is, when we look at all this, align with some technology, make your choices well, but make sure you step out as well and reflect and realize, that there are two paths, distinct paths you can travel. One of them is performative, one of them is copying, one of them is trying to correct all the errors and distortions you see, and the other one is to align with the one that created it all and who wants to correct the distortion. Choose well.
Indeed. I think the factor is that vibration, what you were talking about then, that frequency, is walking with God takes you away from all that worldly stuff. When we're going back to a time before the flood, Alex, we're talking about technology now. I think the technology we have now, we've already had once before, and much better. We're getting technology given to us that at least 40 years behind of what the technology they actually have got and that they're working on. But when we see like Syria, where there's ruins in Syria that has been destroyed by ISIS, you had a temple of Baal there that was the size of the footprints of the Pyramid of Giza. This was a temple of Baal right in Syria that has been destroyed, and the monumental capacity to build these temples and the cities that surrounded them, because you can still see what these footprints were like. Now, if those were Stone Age, like you just said, you're teaching those levels that we are taught. What about before? Where have these buildings come from? What's happened with these orphan trains, these Cabbage Patch Kids? We used to think they're little dolls in the 80s and 90s. These are real things. Now, for me, that is what I'd want to know. But the school education system are teaching a narrative. So hopefully when home education and stuff like that, it's gonna be presented as both. For the student to learn, discern themselves. We've got to get back to not throwing information away and saying, no, that's it. You must listen to me, do as you're told. That's the education system. there's not much thinking that goes on. It's certainly not these days. If you can say that I'm a cat and can I go and have a crap in your office, there's something not right there, meow. There's something not right with that. Anyway, we've gone over time. It's 10:15. Thank you for everybody who stuck with us through the live and in the chat. It's been another lively chat. For those of you who are watching it post live through the week, I hope you still find something out of this, and I hope that you can start conversations and see where people around you are at. Taylor always says, "Do your own research." It's a throwaway line that a lot of people don't feel comfortable hearing. But you can't be taught this stuff. You have to go and experience it. You have to go and learn it for yourself. Because other than that, what your mum and dad said to you is going to be, mum and dad won't lie. But they did, because they were lied to. So we've got to understand that this Babylon system that has come from, you mentioned the Tower of Babel, before Babel, but this Babylon system, this commerce system that's always been there that drags us all into it, this is all part of a plan that was started many, many, many years ago. And the work that was done in that, the evil that put Lucifer on a throne in bloody hell, I've got a brain fart there, where Nebuchadnezzar was in Babylon, that area. So Lucifer rises to Satan's throne there. So Satan puts Lucifer on his throne, and they think that's it, that we've got everything. But he was smoked down. All these men of renown were smoked down because the Watchers were told, you're going to watch your kids butcher each other. And that work that was started by Satan with a little whisper, all he's done is untie a horse in the parable, Alex. The horse has jumped the fence at the crops. The horse has been shot. The owner of the horse has come out and shot the person who shot the horse and started a war. And they all blame Satan. He said, I only untied the horse. I didn't do all that. So all that work that Satan was rubbing his hands at and watching and laughing at us all, it was all finished. It was all finished at the cross. And I think that's where we're now at. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Good night. God bless.
Have a good week.
Were spoken before dust had a name. Giants in the valley call fear into the plain. Whispers in the garden, tongue sharp as a blade. Eyes on the fruit, heart already swayed. Enoch's cry to the blood in the sand, from the first fall to the nail in his hand. Every name written, every line in the light. You're the way, the truth, and the life. From the shepherd's field to the empty tombstone. Every broken why in the pull of your arms. All the war, all the weight, every battle run. You said, it is finished. It is done. Jesus in the courtyard, spit on his face. Jesus on the hillside, taking our place. Jesus on the timber, breath almost gone. Father, forgive them. Then the veil is torn. From Enoch's cry to the blood in the sand, from the first fall to the nail in your hand. Every name written, every soul in your sight. You're the way, the truth, and the life. From the ancient fall to the last rising sun. Every story thread pulling into one. All the war, all the weight, every battle run. You said, it is finished. Yeah. It is